Good evening. Welcome to the National Bar Association Young Lawyers Division Bar Leadership Program. Today we will be introducing President-elect Carlos Moore, who is going to be our 79th National Bar Association President out of Mississippi. On behalf of YLD, we will be having Chair-elect Chloe Woods, who will be chair next year when President-elect Carlos Moore will be president. And so I'll give it to you, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Shanika.
Thank you.
Chair Williams, rather. So Chair-elect Moore, it's great to see you this evening. How are you?
Good to see you.
Well, I wanted to just have a little bit of time with you so we can know more about who's coming next and what the future leadership of the bar looks like. So to start, can you tell us a little bit about your background and what made you want to go to law school?
Good question. I could remember being 5 years old, 6 years old, and telling my parents I wanted to be a lawyer. I always liked watching the law shows, whether or not it was Matlock or Perry Mason or LA Law. A little later on in life, Miami Vice. I liked the police officer shows, TJ Hooker. So all of that, Law and Order, I was for it. So I love to argue from a child, very young child, going forward. So I thought it was a perfect fit. So I decided probably 5 or 6 that I wanted to become a lawyer. So I followed that dream. At one point, I decided when I got a little older that I would become a physician. But I eventually went back to my first love, which is law, and then I love politics as well. So law is going to be a good segue into politics.
Okay, well, you knew at 5 or 6 you wanted to be a lawyer. Did you go straight through after undergrad?
I did. So I went to college. Initially, I was biomedical sciences pre-med, but by my junior year, I had changed to political science pre-med because I had become convinced I may go to law school instead of med school. And so I eventually stopped taking the pre-med courses and just focused on political science and took the LSAT and got in and went straight to law school. So University of South Alabama for political science and then Florida State University for law school.
Okay, I'm like, I had to make sure you had a plug there for your for your alma mater. And I happen to know that you are a member of the Divine Nine, so let's go ahead and let you rep that as well.
Kappa Psi. Loops, yo.
And what did you like most about law school? What did you like least about law school?
What I liked least about law school was the first year. The first year was probably the toughest academic experience of my life. So it was like no other year. But after the first year, I fell in love with law school. I survived that, and I really enjoyed my second and third year. But the first year was tough. I don't know if there's anything that can really prepare you for it. College doesn't prepare you for it because it's a different method of teaching and learning. So the Socratic method and having to read all of that and be prepared every day to be called on without forewarning is nerve-wracking. And then the one test per class a semester, and that decides so much of your future. It's something to go through, but it's a trial by fire. But I like rising to the occasion. So.
And I know that you were previously a chair of the Young Lawyers Division and kind of keeping this pipeline between the law students and the young lawyers going on to leadership in the big bar, something that's important to you. If there's anything that you could share with people who are recent law graduates, anything that you can think about from your time, what would that be?
Well, I got my first taste of the NBA during my first year of law school. I went to the Nebraska conference and I won treasurer. So I became national treasurer and served as that for Nebraska my second year. So Nebraska and the NBA at that time had a very good relationship, and we had our conference. We had the Cora T. Walker breakfast during the NBA's conference. So I went to Washington, D.C. in 2000 for my first NBA convention, and I was just mesmerized and overwhelmed by so many successful Black lawyers and judges, and I knew I had found a home for me for the duration of my legal career. So during that first convention, I said, one day I'm going to become president of the NBA. I set it out 20 years ago, and I was just overwhelmed and knew that would be my home. So I graduated law school in 2002, 2003. I was in New Orleans for the NBA convention, and I've been coming ever since, or going ever since. And I joined the Young Lawyers Division in 2003. And I started with social justice, well, really community service. I was community service chair for 2 years with the Young Lawyers Division. And then I went up to the rank vice chair, chair-elect, and then chair. So I was chair, I think, 2007 and 2008. And so I had a good time, a good run with the YLD, and I tried to prevent what I had seen so many others do. You go through the top of the YLD and then you just go off and to, I don't know, fall off the screen or fall off the radar. And I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to stay involved with the National Bar Association. So after my term as YLD chair, and just a good plug, we did receive the Outstanding Division during my year from President Benita Banks. We decided to run for regional director. And so we were regional director that kept us on the board. And then we did board member at large for 4 years. And then ran for vice president. And did that for 2 years. Here we are now, several years later, as president-elect.
Yes, and the first president-elect, or will be the first president from Mississippi. What does that mean to you? What does that feel like to be able to represent in that way?
It's awesome. It's an awesome feeling. At some points, I didn't think it, even though I knew it was possible, I didn't think it was probable. Because after 96 years, I was like, they hadn't got one yet. So what makes me believe that I'll be the first? But I believe hope springs eternal. And I knew I was inspired by Fred Gray. Fred Gray, the legendary Fred Gray, is the past president. He's from Alabama. And I knew that if he could do it from a small state, I could do it as well. And so while I had never represented Rosa Parks or Dr. King, I am a civil rights lawyer and I have fought some battles of my day with police brutality. And so I was hoping that if he did it, I could do it too. And I was bound and determined to get Mississippi accounted for in the presidential realm. And so I'm honored to be the first. And the main thing is that I'm not the last. So we're going to pave the way for other Mississippians to be president of the NBA.
Absolutely. And I know that you are serving as one of the co-chairs of the COVID task force. Is that correct?
I'm on the COVID task force, but I'm co-chairing election protection. So that's near and dear to my heart. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, talk a little bit about that. I would like to know a little bit more about what your passions are and then how they'll play into, I know you're supporting President Hoffa this year, but how you're going to play into your year or what you'll continue from this year.
Okay. So it's a good segue. Last year, when President Hoffa was president-elect, she served as chair of election protection and I was her vice chair. And so it's just a good transition now that I'm president-elect. I'm co-chairing the committee. And so we had already been very much involved and we have a little over 60 days, I believe about 62 days to election day. And we're working hard with our coalition partners, Barbara Unwine, the Transformative Justice Coalition. And we have Tanya Clayhouse, that's the senior advisor to the committee, along with Barbara. And we have so many people with the Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights and others that we're working in tandem with to protect the vote because there are powers that be that are dead set on suppressing the vote, and we want to make sure there's a free election, and that people that want to vote can do so safely. So we have two pandemics that are colliding. You got the voter suppression efforts, then you have the COVID that's killing people. So we want people to vote early if possible, and then if they can't vote early or do absentee voting, that they do so safely and that certain requirements are met at the polls. And so I'm happy that the National Basketball Association has agreed to utilize loan their arenas for voting. And so that's going to give us a lot of space so people can space out adequately if they go to the polls to actually vote in person. So that's a great thing.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. And I guess, I don't know, this just kind of came to mind, but if you talk about absentee and then early voting in some of the states that are doing, utilizing vote by mail, I'm just wondering how intentional you think it may or may not be that things are happening at the post office and mail is running slower and things are being slowed down. It just seems like the work that you're doing right now is more important than ever.
Correct. So we don't have time to sleep. We have to stay woke because, taking away mail sorting machines out of the post office in the last 30 days, why is it just now occurring? They have been having budget problems with the post office. So why are you all of a sudden just taking efforts to do away with machines and things and slowing down the mail? We believe it's intentional, and we're actually encouraging people when you're doing absentee voting, you can actually take your ballot and hand deliver it to your circuit clerk or to the Secretary of State's office. You don't have to mail it. So if you want to guarantee that it gets there to election official on time, I would say hand deliver it if you can. Someone sent me a check the other day for a retainer, and it came from Boston, Massachusetts, and it took 11 days to get here, and they had even paid for a 3-day delivery, and it still took 11 days to get here. So if you send something just first class postage with no guaranteed delivery, no tracking, it's no telling when it's going to arrive, and you don't want to take that chance with your ballot. You want your vote to count. And so I would say if you're going to try to vote, if you don't mail it off this week, you may want to just go ahead and hand deliver it because it's taking an extremely long time for something to get in the mail to the destination safely.
That's very good information for all of us to know. Thank you for sharing that. I didn't know it was taking that long, and that's my former employer. But you talked a little bit earlier about kind of how you've been involved in coming since NBOSA. What made you stay? You talked about people that kind of go to the top of the ranks of YLD and then they kind of float off into the sunset. What keeps you so engaged and invested in coming back each year?
I have tried the ABA. I'm a member of the ABA. I'm a member of AAJ, some other national organizations in the legal field, but there is no place like the National Bar Association. To me, the National Bar Association is somewhere I've always come to recharge and get re-energized for the year ahead. I mean, I love the National Convention. It's like none other. You get some of the most outstanding CLEs. You meet some of the top-notch lawyers and judges in the world, in the country. The ones that you see on TV walking around the convention, they're just down-to-earth individuals, and they treat you like family. And so it's just been a welcoming family, and so I saw no need to leave. If something is broke, why fix it? And so I've stayed around, and the things that I wanted to make better, I figured that no other way to make it better is to be involved on the inside. And so there are a few things we need to change in NBA, and now that I'm in leadership and the 7th president, we'll try to make it better for the next generation.
Right. And I hope that our law students and our new YLD members, new law graduates feel like family with us and within the division. I want to know if we can talk pivot a little bit about career, right? Give them some useful tidbits. Talk to me about your career path, what that first job was out of law school, and kind of how you went through assessing where you would be and make your mark as a lawyer.
Okay. You know, all of this was not perfectly planned. While I finished Florida State University College of Law in 2002, I decided to get married, and I moved back to Mississippi going into my 3rd year. So I finished at the University of Mississippi School of Law. I was a visiting student there for my last 30 hours, and those hours transferred back into Florida State. And so while I was at Ole Miss Law School, I got a job in Grenada. So Grenada is my wife's hometown where we live in now. And so I got a job there at a firm, a small white plaintiffs firm. I was the first Black to integrate that firm. They had never had a Black professional in the office. And so I was a clerk there for a year. They offered me an associateship. And so I took the associate position, stayed there 4 years as an associate. And then I set off on my own and started my own firm in 2006. But I probably would have stayed with that firm had they given me the raise I asked for, but he refused to give me a raise. And I'm not a person that takes no well. So I can show you better than I can tell you. So I set off on my own. And started my own firm in 2006, and the rest has been history. My mother gave me the money to start my firm. She had retired, her first retirement, and so she gave me $35,000 to start my firm, and we used that $35,000 as a launching pad. And within 3 years, we were able to pay her back in full, and we've been full speed ahead.
Well, that was going to be my next question. What about the mechanics of law practice or law practice management? How much capital do you need? When did you decide that you were ready to take on staff, or did you have someone as an assistant all the time? So for those that might be on the fence about starting their own firm, kind of what was that like, and walk me through the mechanics of managing a practice?
Gladly, I would say bloom where you're planted. I tried to do a great job at the firm I was at initially. I started workers' comp for his firm, and so I opened up that section for him. I learned it and ran it for his firm, and he had never done it. So when I left, of course, you give notice to everyone that you're leaving, and they can either stay at that firm or they can follow you to your firm. And so I was blessed that 60 people decided to follow me to my firm, so I had a base to build from. And so I knew it was just going to be a matter of time before the money came in. And so 60 folks followed me. I think some of them had 2 cases. They had a PI case and a workers' comp case. I had like 75 cases. So I rented a small 600 square foot space on the 2nd floor of a mini mall, and I stayed there for about 6 months. For the first month in February through March, I was there by myself. I did everything from A to Z myself. But having those cases, it started getting too much. So I brought in an assistant in March after being on my own a month. And so Tasha Phillips, she's now my firm administrator. She's been with me now for 14 years, because I started in 2006. So yeah, the years are flying by. So she was promoted from secretary, has gone through the ranks, and now she's my firm administrator, the most senior person I have that's been with me the longest. But we went from there, and then by the end of that year, we started in February of 2006. By November of 2006, we had purchased the building and decided to build some equity, and that helped us pull out equity to fund some of the cases. And so that was good. And we stayed there for 8 years until we were able to build this building that we're in now. And so we've progressively grown. We just try to do a good job for each client, and a happy client makes a good practice. And I fell into civil rights and by happenstance. My first year on my own, my first civil rights client came in. We've been doing civil rights and police brutality cases ever since.
Well, you said you tried other organizations. You've been a member of other organizations. You talked about what those have been like and the family experience that you get from the MBA. Has the MBA played a part in building your practice or in assisting with your practice?
Definitely. I have gotten to know people from all over the country, and they've gotten to know me. Pretty much my friends and colleagues in the NBA, they call me. If they want somebody in Iowa or Detroit or California, they'll call me and ask me, who do you know in that state? Even people outside the NBA, just Black lawyers peers, they call me for referrals for others. And then my friends and colleagues in the NBA, when they need something in Mississippi or Tennessee, they turn to me to be their local counsel or whatever. And so it's been beneficial. It's been a two-way street. So I've referred cases and people have referred cases to me. And so it's been very fruitful. And I tell people it's a good time, but if you do it right, you can also make some money and build your business. And so you need to have a twofold agenda when you're attending the NBA convention.
Okay. Now, I know that you were recently sworn in as a judge as well. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And when did you know you wanted to do that? When did you know you wanted to pursue wearing a Black robe?
That's a good question. When I first became licensed to practice, people kept telling me, you'll probably be a judge one day. I didn't see it because that was not my goal. I like being an advocate, and I like picking a side. I don't, initially I didn't think I would like arbitrating or anything like that. But in 2017, I was offered a position as a municipal judge pro tem that I could continue to practice law and be a part-time judge. And so it was too good a deal to pass by, so I accepted the offer. And so I've been in Clarksdale as a municipal judge, was the first African-American man to be a municipal judge over there. And that was a majority Black city. And so I'm all about representation. And so sometimes I do things that's necessarily not on the top of my agenda, but I want us to be represented. In an 80% Black city, you should have a Black judge, in my opinion, somebody that's reflective of the community. And they had two white judges for years, 30, 40 years. And so I was happy to take that appointment. And then this year in Grenada, where I live, this city is probably 51% Black, had never had a Black municipal judge. And so when this last election came around in May, I started inquiring about getting that post, and the city leaders did appoint me. And so I'm happy to serve here as well. I'm all about representation and try to do the best job I can to pave the way for others that look like us.
Oh, that's amazing. That's great. I mean, really inspirational. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting all teared up. Okay. Well, I know your current role is is serving as the managing director of the Cochran firm. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm managing partner of the Cochran firm, Mississippi Delta. So I run the north part of Mississippi for the Cochran firm.
Okay. And tell me about that. Like, how did that transition occur from what you were doing before, like having your own practice, and you built it blood, sweat, and tears, and just sort of starting out from 600 square feet. So kind of how does that look to make the decision to, I guess, merge? Is it a merger at that point?
To go to Cochran? Yeah. So 2006, I started my practice. And then in 2017, I merged with Charles Tucker. So I had been Moore Law Group, then I had been Moore Law Office, Moore Law Group. And then in 2017, we merged with Tucker and we became Tucker Moore Group. And we stayed that for 2 years. And then Cochran reached out to us, me, and then I had to go meet with Charles. And we decided that it was a good opportunity. We could not pass it up. And so we merged Tucker Moore Group into Cochran and became the Cochran firm Mississippi Delta. And so Charles is a partner with me in this firm. We still operate as Tucker Moore Group in Maryland, in DC, where he is. And so it's been a blessing. Johnny Cochran is a Kappa. He's one of my fraternity brothers. And I watched all of the OJ trial back in the mid-90s. And so I thought that was the trial of the century, and when he won that, he gained my respect forever. And I always saw myself trying to build a firm that a national firm like his would be interested in. I didn't know how it would actually happen, but that was one of the goals in my head. But I didn't pursue them; they pursued us. And when they made the offer, we took it. And so it's been a blessing to be with the Cochran firm. We have offices in over 30 cities across the country, and so it's a blessing to be carrying on the legacy built by Johnny Cochran.
Great. Well, I want to ask you some questions about your platform, but before I do that, I want to ask if there's any other career advice or anything that I haven't asked that you think you'd like to share with young lawyers.
Yeah, young lawyers, you have so many opportunities and so many career paths that you can go, so many roads, and you may not know exactly what you want to do with your life or your career. My advice is to always do good wherever you find yourself, because you never know where that road is going to lead. Take full advantage of every job. Seek out intentionally mentors on your job, and if there's no mentors on your particular job in your particular city, find somebody in the National Bar Association that's doing what you want to do and get them to mentor you. Some lawyers get big offers from large firms initially when they get out of law school. And so my thing is, if you do that, don't spend everything that you earn. You may want to start your practice one day, so save some money. Because 9 times out of 10, if you start in a practice, it's probably not going to be in the same field that you were practicing for a big firm. So you need to save the money so you'll be able to launch out on your own. If you're doing personal injury like I was from the beginning, you're going to make less money initially, but you're building those client relationships, and those clients can potentially follow you to your firm if you're doing a good job. So always put your best foot forward, because my boss, being a white man, he never expected that 60 people will leave his firm, a well-established firm, and follow me with 4 years of experience to my firm, but they did, because I knew what I was talking about. And he made the mistake of letting me start the practice. And so if you don't do it yourself, why would they stay with you? And so they followed me, and I was able to build pretty quickly, and it's been a blessing. So my thing is, bloom where you're planted, learn, and put your best foot forward at all times.
Excellent advice. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of what your stand-up platform, and just what you want young lawyers to know, and how YLD kind of fits into your vision and what your brand of leadership is.
Yeah, stand-up is strong, strategic, tenacious advocacy for the next decade, uplifting our people. So I'm always about being an advocate, not being afraid, being relentless, going after what we want. I wanted the flag down in Mississippi, so I challenged the government and filed a lawsuit. Some folks thought I was too ambitious. Some people thought I was crazy, but I knew that it was time for that flag to come down. And within 4 years of me challenging the governor, the legislature and the new governor took it down, and so it's down. I'm one that believes in reparations, so I'm going to fight hard as president for Congress and those in power to give us reparations. And it may not come during my presidency, but I believe it's going to come in my lifetime. And if we fight for it, we will get it. But the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You don't go along just to get along. You have to make some noise. Don't be afraid to get in good trouble. And so one of the people I most respected in life just recently passed, Congressman John Lewis, because he stood for what he believed. That they had to crack his skull, they just had to crack his skull, but he was going to stand for what he believed. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's how I have always been composed. I'm going to fight for what I believe in. I encourage young lawyers, don't be afraid to speak out. Don't believe that your youth is a negativity, because as we've seen across the country this summer, the leaders of Black Lives Matter have been majority young people. I mean, some people 18, 19, 20, 21, standing out, speaking up, and leading these protests. And so we need more of that. As young lawyers, you're between 25 and 35 usually, and so you definitely can get out there and lead the charge and be the change that you're looking for.
Yeah, we're under 40, so just to make sure everybody feels included. Yes, very inclusive. 10 years of practice or under 40 years of age, whichever is more inclusive. Well, I'm not sure if there are additional questions from our viewers, so wanted to make sure I left some time to open the floor. Is our Madam Chair still there, or historian?
Yes. So I know I have 2 questions, but I would also like to acknowledge that our immediate past chair, Nicholas Austin, our current treasurer, is here, and also board member Keela Crane, another past chair, is also here. If you have any questions, please let us know. Either drop them in the box, or let us know if you want us to unmute you. We can do that as well. You just have to raise your hand or drop your question in the box. So President Carlos Moore, President-elect Moore, I've been saying chair-elect until like last week. So you just mentioned about your fight to take down the Mississippi flag. I wanted to know more about that. I think as you mentioned, these past few months, we've seen uprising dealing with police brutality, and the flag in Mississippi has been a long-standing fight that communities across the country, but especially in Mississippi, have been attempting to combat. Can you tell us more about why you chose the path you chose legally in taking down the flag? And is there anything else? What's your next step in Mississippi? Is there anything else that we should be looking for, or that you would hope that young lawyers would also help to assist with?
Thanks for that question, Chairwoman Williams. What led me to do what I did in 2016 was the Emmanuel 9 killing in June of 2015. You had those 9 individuals killed by a Confederate sympathizer, and he was shown to be just in love with the Confederate emblem and imagery. And South Carolina had the foresight to take the flag down off of their state capitol grounds after those horrendous killings. And when I was in law school, one of my best friends was from South Carolina, and we always joked around with each other about who came from the worst state, South Carolina or Mississippi. I told him that South Carolina was the worst because they were the first to secede from the Union. And he told me we were just worse because I was from Mississippi. That was just enough said. Mississippi burning and all that, he thought that we were worse. And then when I saw South Carolina take down the Confederate flag from their state grounds, I said, well, he got one up on me now because they have taken the flag down and we still have it up in Mississippi. And so somebody's gonna have to lead the charge to get it down in my state, because I'm not gonna let South Carolina outdo us without a fight. And so I waited around to see what the elected officials would do. Several bills were filed in January of 2016, 6 months later after the massacre, and all of those bills died in committee. They died in committee without the decency of a floor vote. And so that was very offensive to me. I mean, you had 9 innocent Black lives in South Carolina to die, but yet Mississippians would not do anything. And so what made me very upset was in February of 2016, our governor decided to declare April as Confederate Heritage Month. And I'm like, why would this man do this in February? It's Black History Month, but he's gonna skip March and come in my month and declare April as Confederate Heritage Month. So that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I decided that I would go forward and file a lawsuit against him and allege equal protection violations under the 14th Amendment, with that flag being discriminatory and having a desperate impact upon African Americans. And so we had been researching it for the past 6 or 7 months, and we were just waiting to the right time. I was not an elected official, so I was going to let them do their job if they saw fit to do it. When they saw that they were not going to do anything, I said, someone has to challenge this to keep this going, and we're going to take it to the governor. And so we filed a federal lawsuit. We drove down on February the 29th, and I wanted to file it in Black History Month to send a message, because everything I do is to send a message. And so since he sent a message to Blacks, I sent a message to him. If you're going to pick on us in our month, we're going to show you we're going to stand up and fight. And so I wanted it filed, stamped on February the 29th, and luckily that was a leap year, and it got filed, and we actually got it signed to a federal judge that looks like us, appointed by Obama. And so I was happy to see that. I didn't know how it would turn out, but at least I knew we'd get a fair shake. I figured we'd get a fair shake with that judge looking at it. It was a hard battle. I was the plaintiff and the lawyer, but I felt led to do that. It's not something that I did on my own. I felt led, being a man of faith, raised in the church. I prayed about it and I did it. And the Lord never told me how it would end up, but he told me to do it. And we did it, and we took it all the way to the Fifth Circuit and all the way petition for cert to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court did make the state respond to our petition. Ultimately, they decided not to grant cert, and so the case died. But because of the publicity we gained across the nation and across the world of it, people knew that it was wrong. It was time for that flag to come down. And so during my press conferences, I would make a legal argument, I would make a moral argument, and I would say this and I would say that. I mean, we could go through the court system, but legislature, you have the power to take it down. And I would tell the athletes, I would tell them in my press conferences, Mississippi loves sports. Football players, if y'all decide not to play another down, that flag will come down much sooner than me ever, what I'm doing in the legal system. And so at some point after George Floyd, they decided to listen, and the athletes got together and they said, we're not playing anymore. One of the star players at Mississippi State said that this year after George Floyd, he was not playing anymore unless that flag came down. The SEC got involved, the NCAA, and the flag came down in 2020. So 4 years later, it comes down with some of the plays that I had given them in 2016. But time brings about a change. And if you never give up and more people you get a chorus of people saying the same thing, it eventually happens. And so I think the same thing can happen with reparations. I mean, Bob Johnson is saying it now. You got T.I. saying it. You got several more people not ashamed to say reparations. Usually people thought we were crazy, thinking the price tag is too high. Even though we built this country and have not been paid it over 400 years, it's time to pay us. And you cannot have, in my opinion, you cannot have atonement without, you cannot have forgiveness without atonement. And the way to atone for the sins of the past is to pay us and pay the living generations and succeeding generations reparations. And so that's a lot to answer your question, Chairperson Williams, but that's why we did it.
No, that's great. I know for me, I'm always interested in the why behind people, why they chose to, file in this court, or why they chose to, so that I appreciate the story. And I think that I remember you went live when the flag came down. And so to know the background and see it in real time, is very inspiring to me.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about that too was that my wife and mother tried to tell me as I drove down I-55 that we were not too far removed from the 60s, that I probably would receive death threats and all that because I filed a lawsuit. And I just like, this is what, 2016, surely they're not going to do all of that. But within 2 days, I filed a lawsuit, we started receiving the death threats and we had to hire security and all of that. So they tried to warn me, but when I make up my mind to do something, come hell or high water, I'm not turning back. And so I know it was God that led me to do it, because otherwise we would have been dead by now, because they were serious with death threats, and had God not encamped his angels around us, we would have been dead. But if God tells you to do something, he has the ability to see you through it, and he protected us, and so I'm forever grateful. And then I'm glad that my wife finally saw, my daughter sees that the flag is down and that our efforts were not foul, that they did bear some fruit. And so that's another reason I know God was in the picture.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
I see. Oh, Nick has said, great program.
Thanks, Nick.
I know, just before we went, I guess we're not live. Before we started recording, Chloe and I were speaking about the fact that COVID-19 has changed our plans for this year. For example, we planned on going to Martha's Vineyard last month. That was going to be our first program. So Chloe, if you want, hopefully we can go outside and be in Martha's Vineyard next year. I know we don't know when this will end, but for your year, do you have any, I guess, contingency plans in case we can't go outside? And is there anything that YLD can do to assist you, whether you have in-person events or online events?
Yeah, we definitely want to be a full partner with YLD during my year. We are hopeful. Most projections that I heard starting in February, March of this year was that we would have a vaccination within 12 to 18 months. So if you take 12 months, that puts us in February of next year, and then 18 months puts us right at the time I'm getting sworn in July in Memphis. So it is my belief that most of my year will be in real time, but we will have virtual contingencies, but we are planning to be in Jackson, Mississippi for the Wiley Branton symposium in the fall of 21. So that'll be in October of 21. And then we plan to be in New Orleans for the Gertrude Rush mid-year in March of 22. And our plan is to be in Las Vegas for the annual meeting in the summer, so July of 22. So we're planning, those committees have been populated with chair people, and they are off planning for real-time conferences and conventions, but they're gonna also have some contingencies in place in case COVID doesn't allow us to be great as we wanna be. We're also planning to have a international trip. We believe we will have the first international trip in the last couple of years. And we are looking at Europe, doing 3 cities in Europe. We're also looking at a few countries in Africa, so we're gonna pick out the best international trip for May of 22. So we want the YLD.
This is breaking news. I didn't know.
We have a lot of good plans. We have a team in place. We almost have a shadow government. I've picked most of my team administration, and we're just planning every 2 weeks. We're having meetings planning for our year. We plan to do some great things, and so we're looking forward to working with Chloe as chairperson. And you'll still be around. I know you're not going to go off into the sunset, so we'll plug you in when you want to go, Chairwoman Williams. And we're glad that Nick is still on the board, and Keela Crane is on the board, and we look forward to working with everybody on the big board as well as the YLD.
Thank you. We do have one question. So it's from actually our Vice Chair, Carla Jordan Detmore. With the energy around racial justice this summer, it appears that there has been a significant uptick in activity by non-Black people advocating for racial justice, ending police brutality, etc. How can we, as members of the NBA, which is a predominantly Black bar association, capitalize on this energy by our white and other colleagues and friends and make them effective allies to advance our racial justice agenda, but without also exhausting ourselves, having to explain implicit bias, the types of things we face in our lives, without being overly exposed to the trauma of videos of Black people being killed, etc.
Carla must be a professor. She has to be a professor. I'm gonna have to read this again. All right, that's a great question. Let me see. How can we make them effective allies going forward? Recently, I'll answer it like this. Recently, I was asked to speak to Eli Lilly. Eli Lilly is probably a Fortune 100 company and definitely a Fortune 500 company. I spoke to them probably 2 or 3 weeks ago for their African American Latinx conference. So it's about 5,000 people attended virtually. Normally that would have been a in-person thing. I would have flown to Indiana and done it for them, but we were able to speak to them virtually. And I was interviewed by the Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer. So what is happening is, for the first time in our lifetimes, you have not only white individuals standing up and fighting for us, because look at what's going on in Portland. It's none of us in Portland. I mean, those people are standing and fighting for Black Lives Matter or of the lighter hue. And so we're appreciative of that. We're also appreciative of the corporations that are throwing money towards racial justice initiatives now. And so the NBA, both CK and I are taking full advantage of this. The Amazons of the world, the Walmarts, we are going after the racial justice dollars from the corporations. And we're not only trying to get the dollars for just one particular year, we're asking for long-term commitments, 3 to 5 years, to go towards social justice initiatives led by the NBA. So there are many things we're trying to do. And we welcome these individuals as partners with us in the fight, because Black lives have to matter to more than Black people for justice to be done in America. And so I'm happy to see what's going on across the nation, across the world. I mean, you had people marching for us in Tokyo, Australia, after George Floyd, and that was just an amazing thing to see. And so we live in exciting times. It's the best of times, yet the worst of times. And so for the next 62 days, we have to stay vigilant and stay woke and work to guarantee and protect the vote. I can't tell you who to vote for as president-elect, a president of an organization that is a 501c6, that also has a 501c3. We have to stay nonpartisan, but the main thing is vote your conscience and make sure your vote is protected. I mean, we want you to vote safely, vote early if you can, and if you do vote on election day, November 3rd, do so in a safe and distant manner.
Carlos, we have 2 more questions actually from our current board member and past chair, Crane. So one question is, how do you plan to increase the diversity of programming for NBA to reach our lawyers who work in IP, data privacy, corporate counsels, or other specialty practices?
We want to rely heavily on the sections of the NBA. We have some of the sections that are our substantive-based law leaders. They're experts in certain areas, and so I'm going to rely on the experts. And so the corporate law section, commercial law section, I'm going to be dependent on them to help. The IP section, we have IP section, and I'm going to depend on the subject matter experts, and we're going to come up with programming that fits the bill for those individuals. I tell everyone it's something for everybody. Everybody in the NBA is not a civil rights lawyer. I do believe that what's good for us, what's good for the general African American is good for any type of lawyer, because at the end of the day, when all said and done, people see us as black folks. I mean, no matter if we're a lawyer, a doctor, a judge, a teacher, whatever it may be, a street sweeper, we're all Black at the end of the day. And when we're walking down the street or riding in the car late at night, they don't know what our profession is, but they know the color of our skin, and that's what they're going to treat us as. And so to a certain extent, we want to do things that's going to benefit all African American lawyers and all African Americans, period. But then to a different extent, we want to make sure that we help you in your your chosen career trajectory. So whatever your chosen specialty is, we want to make sure we have programming that is reflective of things that you need in your career.
Well, something that recently took place in one of the group meets, I'm thinking about this, after we lost Chadwick Boseman to colon cancer, the conversation really organically developed discussing health and health disparities in the Black community. So another question that was posed in the chat just now is, how do we increase the dialogue or the discussion around mental health in Black lawyers and make it a consistent or recurring conversation? You have any thoughts on that?
I do. As I told you, I've already put together my cabinet and my senior advisors. And one of my senior advisors for health affairs is a physician. And so I've appointed and asked Dr. Neville Campbell out of Las Vegas to be my medical advisor during my administration. So he's going to help us speak to issues in various arenas dealing with health, whether or not we're focusing on colon cancer, because it's apparent that if Chadwick died at 43, we need to have people having tests a lot earlier than what the recommendations are. They don't recommend testing until you're 50, and he died at 43, and it takes 5 to 10 years for the polyps to become cancerous. And so we know he had to have had it as early as his early 30s, and so we need earlier testing. And so he's going to advise us on things like that, mental health issues, things dealing with COVID and the healthcare disparities. And so that's one thing. And then my wife's a nurse practitioner, and so she's going to be a full partner with me in leading the NBA. And so she'll be assisting me and advising me in things that's dealing with women's health issues as well as general health issues.
Great. I'm going to check and see if we have any more questions. Don't believe that we do. Do you have anything that you want to add?
I'm just excited. I'm excited to work with the YLD. I'm excited to see the number of past chairs that's on the board. I believe at this point, it's 4 of us on the board got voting positions. If you have the president-elect, you have the treasurer, and you have 2 members at large that's on the executive committee. And all of us are either the current chair or past chairs of the YLD. And so that's amazing. That's the first in my 20 years with the NBA to see that many on the executive committee. And so that's been a long desire of mine. As I said previously, most of us will become chair of the YLD, and that put us on the board for a year, and then we off into the sunset, focus on our careers, raising our families, and you may or may not see us again. And so to see us stay around and try to take this organization forward, it's a changing of the guard. I mean, and once I take the helm as president, it's really going to be a changing of the guard, and I don't see us going back the other way anytime soon. I believe we are going to take full advantage of the technology that's available, and we're going to make this a 21st century organization. I mean, it has a great history, it has a great story, but it's time to move forward fully into the 21st century, and we're going to take it where it needs to go, deeper heights, higher heights and deeper depths. And so I'm excited about the road ahead, and we're going to have some awesome trips. I understand the places that the YLD is planning on taking for its retreat. I think the Renaissance retreat was started as far as beginning of my tenure with YLD. I was on the very first one. I have not missed many since the one in 2004, 2005. And so I'm looking forward to your conference. I'll be there wherever you may be going. I like the 2 options that Chloe has given us. And so I'll be there with the judges. I'll be there with the corporate lawyers, commercial law section. I'm going to vote 365 days to being president of the NBA, and we'll have a great year.
That's awesome. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I want to turn it back over to Chair Williams, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you, President-elect Moore. Thank you, Chair-elect Woods. And thank you, everyone, for coming out. We hope that the Bar Leadership Roadshow series is something that continues to interest you, allows you to learn about the big bar, as we lovingly call it, and we hope that you learn about the National Bar Association in general. We sent out a newsletter today. Please check your voters registration. Please check to see if you're registered to vote. Register to vote if you're not. Fill out the census. We only have 1 month left. This is the month. And so you'll hear more from us about that all month long and until Election Day. And I hope everyone has a great night. Thank you, everyone.
All right, you have a good evening.
Good evening.
Bye.